Here we are. Hello, everybody. It is High Vibin' with Hilary and Rev Rob, and I am Rev Rob. And hello to you, Hilary.
Hillary.
You.
Hi, I'm Hillary, and
How
I'm
are
here.
you?
I'm ready.
You're ready. Yes, you are ready.
I'm ready.
You ready? Because we've been having an offline conversation about two words that are like the buzzword in the media, and the words are self-care. We've heard so much, especially in our community, about self care, what we need to do to take care of ourselves. What are the measures that we need to do uh, to make ourselves feel the best that we can feel, right? Um, and recently, because that has been in kind of like the public conversation a lot, or in advertisements for any number of indulgent ways we might be caring for ourselves. I know I'm curious as to what you feel for you is self care, Hilary, and how do you care for you?
Yeah, so this topic is very strong for me right now. I am definitely going through a lot of stuff in my own personal life, which is requiring me to really take a look at how I care for myself. Um, what I also want to talk about today, besides self-care, I also want to talk about the difference between self-care and being selfish, because that's important too. Because often when we're trying to take care of ourselves, it may appear as if it's selfish, but it's really not.
Right.
And so self-care for me is beyond getting a massage or taking a walk or calling a friend or taking a bath. Those things are all really important, and I'm sure that there are people that will be tuning in who don't even do that for themselves. It's
Right.
it's possible, but Rev Rob and I were talking offline about how we do these things for ourselves. This is really part of, for me anyway, who I am. I take a walk every single day. I get a massage once a month. I do things that other people may feel is indulgent, but for me, oh my gosh, it's breath. I mean, it's really how I
It's
take
your
care of.
baseline. You got to
Right.
start right.
And for me, the part that I am learning to navigate is self-care in relationships where perhaps one person is taking more and you find yourself giving too much. How about you? Where are you?
Well, this kind of echoes back to the to our boundaries discussion, right? Um, because it's where do we stop and where does the world around us begin? So we kind of get these messages like, if we want to feel better, be of service to others, volunteer, help somebody. That is how we get rewarded when we take ourselves out of ourselves to help others. At the same time, uh, if we deplete ourselves without, re-nourishing ourselves, then we've got nothing to give. And I think I've always been, I wouldn't say I've been indulgent, but again, harkening back to the boundaries discussion, I've always felt like I've put up enough of uh, a force field around myself that I can decide to care for myself within that wall. So I never, for the most part, I don't put myself in a place where I feel very vulnerable in where I'm having to care for something that gets beyond me. At the same time, uh, I also realize that I might be caring for myself if I become more involved. We kind of said this last time. It's like knowing in your heart or in your gut when something is going to fuel you and when something's going to deplete you. And I think caring for ourselves is that process of nourishing and giving back and creating a space where we then can then offer more of ourselves to the world. It's like that what they announce on the airlines. Parents, take your oxygen mask and put it on first before you put your kids on, because if you can't breathe, your kid's not going to be able to breathe. So you have to be able to breathe first. And I think it's a lot like that. Like, you got to be able to breathe. You got to be able to know who you are and bring your best self. And that might require making choices that don't look like they're or may look indulgent to others and are actually about just caring for yourself.
Yeah. So like I have an interesting example with this of something that society would look on that this was like not acceptable, but it was something that I needed to do for my own self-care. Sometimes in navigating relationships, it can be tricky. We talked about this, I think, in the boundaries discussion of how, some people deplete you with the energy that they have, even if you protect yourself or whatever. You just wouldn't really necessarily pick to hang out with people like this
Right.
because it's so exhausting. So in my personal life, there have been people that I have been friends with over the years that I had to let go because um, it was kind of like I was always trying to psych myself up before I would see these people, like, okay, I'm going to have a good time. And then I would go out with them or whatever. And the whole time I'd be like, why am I here? I hate this. Or, I just sometimes you're stuck, you've known somebody a really long time and, and they feel a lot for you and you want to feel a lot for them, but you can just feel it's just not a match. And it's what it really is it's not an energetic match. And so I let go of some relationships many years ago that caused, a lot of problems because my husband was still friends with these people, my kids. So it like really affected everybody that I let go of this relationship. But in doing so, it opened up a window for me where all this new good stuff came in. Because a lot of times when we're holding space for people who are energy depleters and we don't have any joy in our connection with them, it's blocking us. By them taking that space, it's blocking us from new people coming in or new experiences coming in. So once I let go of those relationships, even though it was looked down upon and frowned upon by many, many people, my whole world opened up. My business started to thrive. I met some new interesting people. Like everything changed simply from letting that block, letting that go. So, I think it's really tricky navigating this. And I'd like to just really quick say what the definitions of each of these things are, just because I looked them up, just in case anybody doesn't know. So selfish, when someone's being selfish, it means that there's a desire to take from others, often to their detriment. That's being selfish. Whereas self-care is about replenishing your resources without depleting someone else's, restoring your own energy. And anything that we do out of love for ourselves can't be selfish. And just one other interesting point is that if you're worried that you're being selfish simply because you're asking that question, to me says you're not being selfish, because
Totally.
you're asking, because I think a selfish person would not even
Ask the question, right?
right?
Yeah, agreed. That's a very good point. I agree with you there. Yeah, I think people get confused. And again, if we keep minimizing that definition of self-care to, oh, I need to whatever, go to a spa or to get, to do those kind of material world things, which again are important. And if you're not
Yeah,
doing it at all, then that's a place to start. Getting
that is
exercise
good.
regularly, but it's more about feeding the feeding and nourishing the spirit and soul. And because sometimes those things, if you start putting them on a list, like, oh, to care for myself this week, I have to, I've got to run 5 miles and I've got to read this book and then I've got to go get a massage. And if you don't check them off, well, then you're going to beat up on yourself and the self-care is completely, annihilated there. But it's more like, what do you know that you need for you that you can then choose to activate in yourself? Like I remember, when we had Sunday services in person at the church that I've been a pastor of, I would like run around like a crazy person. Like, I always look like I'm stressed out and like I'm doing this. And it looked like sometimes, I guess, to some that I was burdened by this experience. And so oftentimes people would say, oh, you need to relax. You need to take care of yourself. You need to take a break. Don't do all this, delegate it. And for me, if you knew me and you knew how long I waited for this inspiration to come from within, to run around and take care of things and to do things and to make it the best experience for people that were coming through the door, you would have not said that to me because this was my care. Like I waited my whole life. This was my care, being involved. Now, I think years later to be able to assess, okay, when has this become a source of burnout rather than, nourishment? And I think that's where I am with most ways that I'm going to look at caring for myself. So if someone says care for yourself means taking a break from whatever, or to have it, caring for yourself doesn't mean avoiding. Caring for yourself isn't the escape from the issues. It is the way to replenish yourself so that you can face the issues in your life, right?
You said, yes. Yeah.
So
I love that. That's totally true. You have to be able to restore yourself so that you can go back, into whatever this difficult situation is and be clear-headed about it and not be, when you don't take care of yourself that way and you are doing something that's depleting you, it's very likely that you will fly off the handle or you'll, take it out on maybe somebody at home or whatever, feel sick to your stomach. When I'm not giving myself good self-care and I'm letting people walk all over me or something, I feel it in a lot of places. I feel it in my throat where I want to just scream and get out what I need to say. I feel a tightness in my chest, like a pain in my heart. And I feel it. I'm just going to stand up. I feel it, in my abdomen. I feel it here. I feel sick to my stomach, right? That's how your body is telling you when you're not taking good care of yourself. And of course, if you continue to do that, eventually you make yourself physically ill. I'm so, of course, you and I believe in the mind, body, spirit connection. And so it's all connected. So yeah,
and I think sometimes it involves you really discerning, because I think you can decide to tackle something that may seem like it's overwhelming, but that is the self-care choice. So we're talking about relationships. There are times where removing yourself from a situation that is not healthy for you is important. But there are also times that that not addressing it, not saying something, not expressing yourself in some way would be escaping what the real self-care moment is, which is to actually face it head on. So, I think there's a difference between running away and knowing when, okay, if I leave or if I remove myself from this situation, or if I, cut this relationship out and I don't say what really needs to be said, this was not about the relationship. This was not about them. This was about me. And I think knowing that's where the self is important, because you realize that there are things you have to do for you, not to persuade anybody or not to please anybody, but for you. You simply know, if I don't say these words or if I don't do this thing, I will suffer. It's not about others suffering. It's like, and it sometimes involves something that is not pleasant. So self-care, I don't necessarily think is always the pleasant choice, but it is the one that you feel in your heart or your gut or however you're measuring this for yourself is one that you'll come out of it stronger. You can feel it, you can see
Yeah.
it. I will be better for it when I take care of this in that way.
Yes. And sometimes I feel like it would be so much easier in life if we could just be straight with each other and not always try and smooth things over so that this person won't be mad and this person won't hold it against me and this whatever. Like it would be so much easier if we could say what we needed and it could be heard. And then we could even say, I need a break. I just need to, but like when you say those things, it's, people get upset, people get angry, people don't understand, people call you selfish. That's what's really funny to me that I notice is that oftentimes selfish people call the people who are finally trying to do some self-care.
Of course. It's great gaslighting, I think. And I think that's because all of this, pretty much every topic that we, I think, address here comes back to an element of knowing ourselves. And so if we were going to be a society or a culture that we were honest with ourselves or straight, shot from the hip or tell it like it is, we would have to be secure in ourselves to really do that. So you're not just dumping your telling it like it is on the world and expecting the world to respond to you. In fact, you're telling it like it is, knowing that that person may then tell it like it is back to you, but you don't get hurt by it. I think the problem is we get these exchanges going where we're anticipating somebody having a certain response to it. So we
Right.
want to be able to say, I want to be able to tell you how I feel, and you're just going to take it. But that's not how the real world works. If I really want this to work, I'm not telling you how I feel so that you know, or that I'm trying to get you to change. I'm telling you how I feel because
Right.
I need to let you know that this is how I feel. And when I do that, then I'm prepared for the fact that, well, you could very easily come back to me right away with something, and I've got to be prepared for that reaction. A lot of people say you aren't honest with me, and it's like, well, I feel like I've been conditioned to say, well, you say you want honesty, but you don't really, because if I'm honest with you, you won't be prepared for my honest response to you, which in a real exchange is that's just the way it is. Like I can't expect to tell you something that may hurt you, even if I need to say it, and not expect you to respond with some sort of, hurt. I mean, you may not, but I can't expect.
Most people get defensive and then they're like, well, you blah, blah, blah,
Right,
blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, okay. And
right,
that's how a fight happens. And then
right.
that's how, people walk away from each other, which is really sad, because sometimes I think, if we could hear each other, it
That's the key.
it could work, of course there's that ego, right? It's that ego that's like, you're not going to talk to me that
Yeah,
way.
you're right.
I'm
That's for
going to talk to
me.
you now.
Yeah, for me, it's always like, are you going to take that? Are you going to take that? And then
Right.
before you know it, I'm like back in it. But I also know that if I come to a situation where I'm honest for me, and I'm not expecting you to respond in any way other than the way you would, but I'm not expecting you to change it or fix it, or I'm just saying this is what I'm telling you so that I feel I am correct with myself. And that's where I feel like I'm being straightforward. But I get conditioned like everybody else does to get defensive when someone comes back at me at things, or I want to fight back by trying to prove my point based on theirs. But I agree with you. If we could be honest with one another truly, and then not also then be defensive, well, this need for a break from things or an escape, or the care comes at the time that it needs to be, whatever, taken or deployed, not in a moment later where you got to go, oh, I need a break, I need to remove myself from a situation or escape from a situation. Like we're doing it as we go along. We just take
Yeah.
a deep breath and
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes, well, I don't know. sometimes, it doesn't, it's not easy for people. Like when I first described that, my first example about, how I walked away from certain friendships, like
Mhm.
I think there would be a lot of people who watch this who might say, well, I can't just walk away. Maybe it's a spouse, maybe it's someone close in your family, and you can't just walk away. So
Right. A
you
boss who has power over you because they pay your salary or something.
right, you can't just walk away. And it's no one else's job to take care of yourself but you. So you can't really, no matter how a person is coming at you, it's ultimately up to you to take care of yourself. So if I am not taking care of myself in that way, I can't
It's
blame
on
it
you.
on anyone else. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's on
I think
me.
that's where, I mean, in the end, that's where it comes down to. What you just said is so important. It's like no one else can take care of you. Like it is not anybody else's responsibility, not your boss, not your spouse, not your kids. Like it really is you. You may for a moment even understand this intellectually, and then in the middle of a fight, like I know this, and yet I know my tone has just expressed I expected you to manage my feelings in this, but I know in my heart, like that's not, the minute we start doing that is the minute we start getting into this stuff. The minute true self-care is knowing that you're the only person to care for yourself. That means everything that you're feeling is up to you to manage, not somebody
Right.
else.
And imagine if we did that. I mean, like we said before, you and I are good about, the basics, like, and, incorporating in that into our lives every day. And again, to our audience, if you don't do those things for yourself, they are critical. They're the beginning steps of self-care. But then there's this greater piece of self-care. So, I have a little list of when you would need to use self-care, just
Cool.
because today we're talking about, we've talked about relationships, but there are other times you need to use self-care when you need help with something.
Yes.
That's a big one. A lot of people have a hard time asking for help. I know, I did for a long time. I once had a really bad broken arm that went all the way up here. And it was the first time I had to really like ask my neighbors to help drive me around or drive my kids around or help make meals or whatever. And it was very humbling and also very beautiful to accept the help. So definitely, when you need help, you need self-care. When you're tired, when you're not getting enough sleep, you need self-care. When you just need alone time, self-care. We've talked about when you're in a difficult relationship, when you're in a difficult job, when you're in a difficult living situation, I mean, having bad roommates, that sucks too. When your give is significantly more than the take, you're not getting anything back in the relationship. And then of course, to avoid burnout, you know after, when you're working too much or whatever, to find balance and self-care in your personal life. So those are like the biggies, I guess, right? Do you think
Yeah, they
there's
are. Things are like really important, like sleep. Like I forget to talk about this. Sleep's important. A lot of times when I don't get it, sleep is replenishing in so many ways. So that's critical.
yeah,
And I think asking for help is also really critical. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of the big advertisers on many podcasts is BetterHelp and or Talkspace. Two of these online therapy groups that have exploded in the wake of the pandemic. And their commercials are always, or their ads are always about caring for yourself. So seeking a situation that allows you to talk about something or to get something out, that in of itself is self-care, like knowing when you need help, um,
yes,
not expecting others to do it for you, which is
yeah,
again fine line between asking for help. It's like knowing when to ask for help, and then knowing when you can,
right,
when you don't need it anymore, when you can do
right.
it on your own.
And because what you don't want to become is bitter. And I think what happens with a lot of people who give too much, which I sometimes am in danger of, you become like bitter. And it's such a wasteful emotion. I feel like bitterness there, so ultimately, it always comes back to putting the onus on ourselves for everything. And it's such a good, so I am practicing some self-care for myself these past couple days. And it's, you start to feel, it's almost like you lose yourself sometimes when you're in the mix of all of this. You forget almost who you are. And then, like today's I'm practicing more self-care, and I feel like oh yeah, there I am. Like, I remember
Yeah.
this chick, like, oh yeah, I am really light and fun. And, but that bitterness is because we're not practicing self-care, and that bitterness hardens us. And
Yes.
then you lose sight of who you are. And
Absolutely.
that's nobody's fault but your own. And
Right.
that goes back to, implementing boundaries and, doing all the things that you need to do to get
Right.
yourself back to who you are. Because it
Yeah, being
feels good.
responsible for yourself, being responsible, like
Yeah,
claiming responsibility. It is just it's empowering. It's not putting blame on anybody or on yourself. It is
right,
just taking charge of yourself. It's actually doing the opposite of putting blame. It's saying, look,
right,
you can take control of this. You don't need to blame everybody else. You don't need to put it all on everybody else. You choose. Even if the situation sucks, you can choose to feel differently about it. You really can.
right,
You can choose to realize that maybe I'm involved in this situation because I wanted this. Maybe this person
right,
expects this of me because I set the precedent for it. Maybe I always wanted to just do this, but now I'm just resenting that they don't do it back to me because I'm trying to make them see the world or respond to me in a friendship, the love language thing.
right,
I'm expecting them to speak back to me in their love language, in my love language, but I'm only speaking in mine. So,
right,
you
right.
know,
And everybody comes at things differently. It
right.
makes me think of, if I hold this up, I wonder if everyone can read it or if it's backwards.
Yes, no, it's right there. Yes. Where
Okay.
is
So in my groups, we made these once, and it's something that is so important. What is this here to teach me? So, these situations where we have a hard job, a terrible boss, difficult relationships, all of that, they're really things to be blessed, because you learn so much from these situations if you look at it that way. And you learn, what you're willing to put up with, what you're not willing to put up with, how to learn self-care, how to hold boundaries. You can't learn that from perfect situations.
cannot. No, you cannot. You posted a reel that you talked about that feeling that you have when something's out of sorts with yourself. So, you were talking about it in relationship to trauma. So, when you feel that, like, that buzz in yourself, or that resistance to whatever is going on, or that triggering, that is the opportunity. Triggering, again, is a buzzword, but triggering happens whenever you get that little, like, that resistance to what is
Yeah.
happening. It's in that moment that you can care for yourself, just simply, asking yourself, again, as we said last week, be curious instead of judging. Stop judging yourself. It really
Absolutely.
all comes back to this. And I appreciated that. And I think that's part
Yeah.
of self-care, is taking that moment.
Yes, yes. No, totally. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel pretty complete with this. We only have 1 minute left anyway. Is there anything else that you would add here, or do you feel, do
No,
you,
I just feel, just to remind everybody that, you can go back and listen to all these topics, and they're
right,
so wonderful, but they really keep coming back to this space of, we are here to help each other know who we are, in a
right.
place where we feel safe and confident, and we can fully express ourselves.
Yes.
And when we do that, these won't be the issues that we are talking about today, right?
Yeah. And what I also want to say to our audience is, be kind to yourself. Like, if you're one of those people who hasn't been giving yourself any self-care or self-love or whatever, then start now. Like, you start where you are. If you're, this is the stuff we've been talking about is a little bit harder than giving yourself 30 minutes a day to take a walk, or giving yourself an hour to take a bath. Like if you're not doing that, especially, I know, like, new parents, that's a really, it's hard to carve out that time. So just want to make sure that we're not saying that's super important. That's probably the most
Absolutely.
important. That's the
Yes.
starting point. And then of course, looking at it on a bigger scale when you have the emotional energy to do so, and not beating yourself up, you know, regardless of where you are on the
Right.
scale of self-care, because that's why we're here. We're just here to learn about ourselves and try and do a little better and do a little better,
Yeah. And to be happy.
and to be happy. And happy is sometimes we're happy and sometimes we're not happy, and that's okay too.
Yep.
Yeah. So I guess thanks everybody for
Yes.
joining us. This is a heavy topic. I would love to know, how you deal with this. I'm sure you would too. And
Yes. How do you care for you? How do you care for you? Sometimes I even like to take the word self out of it because self kind of separates us from a part of ourselves. But like, I would invite everybody to say, how do you care for you? Not the self, not like the inner child, but really, how do you care for who you are? Um, Kind
yeah.
of aligns it a little bit. So,
Yeah. And last thing, I just want to read my quote again. If you're worried that you're being selfish, then there's no way you're being selfish, because a selfish person wouldn't even have that awareness. So
totally agreed. Thank you.
thanks everyone.
Bye.
Catch
Have a
you
great week.
later.